welcome to the Risky Business Podcast. I'm Sam Stone. I'm sitting down with people who I have seen take big risks in their life. My goal is to encourage you, challenge you, and push you to take a risk, whatever that may be in your life. Risky business. Let's get risky. Here we go.
Put in work, got so much potential, it hurts. If y'all do not wake up, then y'all gon' get hurt.
Welcome back to the Risky Business Podcast. I am here with Clark Burckle. Thank you so much for joining. I had somebody reach out and mention that you needed to be on the podcast early on, and I was all for it. So thank you for joining. Your story is pretty interesting. I asked you to send over a little bit of a bio. I asked ChatGPT for a bio, and it was almost identical to yours. I was like,
maybe I use ChatGPT.
ChatGPT knows. It knows. Or maybe it like read our text conversation and plugged it in for the information. But your background's wild. You own Different Strokes now, which is awesome. You're an Olympian. Your family has owned multiple fitness places in Louisville as well. You're a Stanford graduate. You went to University of Florida, Arizona. So I'd love to just tee you up. Tell me who you are, and let's get into it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, of course.
I've watched the clips on Instagram, and it's pretty cool. Some of the people you've had on here, so I'm honored. It's pretty
dude, thanks so
exciting.
much. I have Different Strokes has a special place in my heart. If you're listening from outside of the Louisville market, Different Strokes was a par 3. To me, it was a par 3 course over by Cal. It was actually my first job ever.
Really? Okay.
Worked at Different Strokes, drove the cart.
Yeah.
Ball
You'd be
picker upper
surprised
cart.
how many people I've talked to that have told me similar stories.
Worked
Like,
my
that was
first job. I gave all my friends free buckets of balls. That was not when you owned it, so I won't tell you that now. Gave all my friends free buckets of balls and was like, hey, come destroy my cart. And they would just hit driver, 3-wood right at me and try to... And you never get 100% prepared for a golf ball coming at you at 150 miles per hour or whatever they're coming at. And you're sitting behind a cage and it's right there next to you. So Different Strokes is a special place in my heart. Obviously, you've done a ton of work to it since then. The River Road location is amazing. You got I haven't been there since you did the whole new remodel off to the side, but we'll get there eventually. Tell me about yourself.
Well, first off, it's awesome that you love Different Strokes. There's a lot of people that have used the facility, and that was primarily why I was interested in it. I used it too growing up, and I too have been hit by golf balls when I'm in the picker. And our new staff shirts actually have a picker on the back, and it says "Hit It." So
I feel like a lot of places don't like you hitting the picker.
I know it's not great because it can cause a little bit of damage, but it's just part of the culture. So it's like you get a little miffed by it, but it's also fun. So.
Somebody trained me early on. You never drive sideways. You always drive up and down.
Yes.
Makes the guy change the club 5 times when you're going, changes distance. If you just stay at that 150-yard line, they're going to hit an 8-iron at you all day and just
you can
try
see
to pound you.
You can see him take aim at you. Like if you're in there, you can see him change their, load a ball real quick, change a club.
You always knew who was hitting at you, too. Even if there's 20 guys out there, you're like, I know it's you. I can't prove it, but you're trying to kill me.
For sure. Little background. I grew up in Louisville. I was born in Louisville. And, from pretty much from when I can remember, I was swimming. My family were members at Lakeside. Yeah. And so Lakeside sort of served as like, in the summer, like our daycare for my sister and I, and my sister's about 2 years older. I've got a brother who's also 10 years younger, but Caroline and I grew up largely together, and both my parents worked, and at the time they owned Mockingbird soccer, and it was some tennis at that time too, and then later bought Louisville Tennis Club and Blairwood Tennis and Fitness Club, and so we were kind of, my summers are busy in that business, and so my parents were working a lot, and so I'd spend pretty much all waking hours at Lakeside, so that was really my introduction to swimming, and I just became a fish. I loved being in the water and loved hanging out there, and I also liked to practice, which was rare, I guess. You hear a lot of people talk about swimming, and it's a grind, and I just really enjoyed it. So that was how I got into swimming, and obviously swam in high school and swam at St. X, and then in college I first went to University of Florida, had some attitude problems, and had a falling out with my coach, a pretty bad one at the end of my junior season, and decided to transfer, which is when I ended up in Arizona. And it was kind of interesting being a senior transfer. It's not that crazy anymore with NIL, but back then it was like I was sort of one of a kind, and you know, I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, but I wanted to end up at a program where I maybe had a little bit more responsibility for what races I wanted to choose.
You're a breaststroke guy, right?
I was a breaststroker, but you know, when I went into college, I was more of an IM and distance swimmer, and you know, my goal was, like a lot of swimmers, was to make the Olympic team. And I wanted to win NCAAs. I wanted to win an individual title at NCAAs. I wanted to make the Olympic team. You know, I wanted to make the World Championship team. But my best events were really the 200 IM and the 400 IM, and there were these two guys that swam those, Ryan Lochte and Michael Phelps, and they were light years ahead of everybody else. So it was like I just kind of knew I had no chance. It was like, you know, how many times can Phil Mickelson get second at the U.S. Open? It just sort of felt like that in my head, and still be so far off winning, right? So when I made the switch to Arizona is when I really focused on breaststroke, and it was my senior year, like I said, and I ended up winning NCAAs that year in the 200 breaststroke, and then
and winning NCAAs means
so just
for somebody who doesn't know swimming, you came in first place out of all college athletes.
Yep, out of everybody in college in that
wild.
particular race. Yeah, it was cool. It was one of my prouder moments.
How much did you win by?
I only won by 2/100ths of a second.
That's who cares?
Which
That's
is like
awesome.
a recurring theme in a lot of my races. It's very close.
2/100ths.
2/100ths to win NCAAs, 8/100ths to make the Olympic team.
No way.
And I wish I could say, you know, I got a medal by 8/100ths at the Olympics, but I didn't, and that's probably one of my biggest regrets. But
what year was it that you
cuts.
won NCAAs?
2010.
No way. Yeah. And then right after that, when were the next Olympics?
2012.
Okay.
So when I transferred, I lost a year of academic credits. They just had a few that didn't transfer over, so I had to take a 5th year of class. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to take a 5th year of class, I should just keep swimming. And I was going to keep swimming anyways. I was pretty close to making the team in 2008. And so I knew that in 2012 I had a pretty good shot. So I was like, if I can kind of, you know, do this 5th year and still be on some form of scholarship, and then, you know, the 6th year would be the year that I'd go for the Olympics, and I'll just quit afterward regardless of the outcome. And so just stayed in Tucson. In college swimming, a lot of the professional teams, you know, I air quote it because it's kind of a pseudo-professional sport, they're just postgraduates training at college programs, because the college programs have the infrastructure, the pool, the resources, the coaching, and you pay your way, but, you know, you don't have to go find a group of people to work out with, which is sort of the hard part, because there's a ton of attrition after college ends. You know, a lot of people are like, I need to get a job, or, you know, this dream there's very few people that can achieve it, and even if you do achieve it, you know, it's not like there's boatloads of money in swimming. You know, there's money for a select few.
Yeah.
And, so I kind of knew all that going into it, but I also remember when I was 8 years old and, you know, went to the Atlanta Olympic Games and watched all my favorite athletes, and like I was just, you know, I knew I was a swim nerd just the same way somebody is with basketball, football, or baseball, or, you know, hockey, the big four. You know, I just knew everything about everybody, and I did that not because I was trying to study. I did it because I just genuinely loved it. You know, I'd count strokes, I'd, you know, look at splits, I'd look at the gear that, you know, athletes I liked were wearing, and, you know, it's like I was just kind of a fanboy. So
who's your favorite swimmer of all time?
Oh man, it's a tough question. So I got a few that I really love. Tom Dolan's at the top of my list. He was he broke the world record in the 400 IM at the 2000 Sydney Games, coming off of a pretty notorious asthma attack spell type deal. He always kind of struggled with it, but he wasn't feeling well, and it was kind of played up in the news a little bit. And the night before, so the 400 IM's on the second full day of competition at the Olympics. It's now the first day. But the night before, the American team had lost the 4x100 freestyle relay for the first time in however many years to the Australians. And it was when one of the Australians stood up and fake smashed an air guitar, because one of the Americans the night before had said, you know, we're going to smash the Australians like a guitar. And so after they won, they did that. And so anyway, so
that was
like
the motivation he needed.
Yeah. And so like he ends up winning this gold medal, breaks the world record. And at the time it was like an impossible world record to break. He owned it, but set it in 94, and nobody thought it'd be broken forever. And so he had this interview afterward with Eric Vint, who's another one of my idols. And he was second in that event. Just talking about how, you know, jacked up he got from that Australian debacle the night before. And so like, you know, just stuff like that really excited me. And then there was another swimmer named Eric Namesnick who tragically passed away in a car accident maybe 15 years ago, maybe around that time, but he was also a really good IM swimmer for America. And like, I've got a picture getting his autograph at 96 in Atlanta. And, you know, it was just like a ultimate moment for me. So I always looked up to those guys a lot, which made it even harder to not swim the 400 IM because it's sort of like, it's like the decathlon of swimming. You know, it's sort of seen as like the ultimate champion event. Like if you can put together all 4 strokes in one race and it's grueling, you know, it's 100 of each, like it's tough. So, you know, those guys were my heroes. And then as I moved forward, you know, some of the breaststroke swimmers, there was a Japanese guy named Kosuke Kitajima that I loved. And like, I got to race him. He was actually in the Olympic final I was in. And so I got to like talk to him. And
okay, so what year did you swim in the Olympics?
2012.
2012. And what did the qualifier look like? Did you make it by, was it close to you making
yeah,
it?
It was really close. So like at the Olympic trials, anything that's 200 meters or less, they do prelims, semifinals, and finals. And so you swim 3 times. And so through prelims, I was first. Through semifinals, I was first. And, you know, at that point, I was like, you know, I got
How many people make
pretty
it?
good shot. Just 2.
Okay.
Which is like an old rule that the IOC, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but put into place after like the 68 games. It used to be 3 athletes. Like in track and field, I believe it's still 3 from each country. But the Americans were winning all the medals. And so they limited it to 2 because they didn't want, you know, a sweep on the medal stand. So they take the top 2, and honestly, the guy that won at that trials is like a month before the Olympics, was a total dark horse. He was out in lane 7. I didn't even see him, but I was wedged in between.
Can you see other people when you're swimming in the pool like that?
Breaststroke, it's kind of tough. You can see them when you do a turn because you go underwater and you can kind of look around.
Yeah.
Depends. I looked a ton when I raced. Like I was just kind of a pure racer. And so like I'd kind of get in trouble with my coaches for that because they'd be like, keep your head still, you know, stop looking. You know, it's like putting blinders on a horse, right? It's like just move forward, don't look around. But I like to gauge where I was in the pool a lot. And that kind of stems from practice. When I was younger, I would always be looking. But he was in lane 7, so I couldn't really see him. But I was focused on the 2 guys that were to the left and right of me, which was Eric Chanteau and Brendan Hansen. And Brendan Hansen is probably the best American breaststroker of all time. He was at the end of his career. He was kind of making a comeback.
Yeah.
He had held the American record before it was broken by Eric Chanteau, who was on the other side of me. So like those 2 are the 2 heavy favorites, and I was probably the 3rd favorite guy to make it. I beat Brendan by, I want to say 0.4, and I touched out Eric by 0.08. And then the guy over in lane 7 beat us all by like almost a second.
No
it just
way.
didn't even, none of us saw him. We were all shocked. There was like a cool clip afterward where we were all just kind of like, what?
But
I got
it
in, yeah. So it was.
And then what place
was
did you come in the
exciting.
Olympics?
6th.
And where were those Olympics at?
They're in London.
No way.
Yeah. So, you know,
What's that like going over there representing a country? Because that's got to be a pretty cool feeling like you have not the weight of the country, but the blessing of the country sending you over there saying this is our representation.
I mean, it's pretty special, you know, like they treat everyone, especially on the United States team, like heroes. You get all this free gear, you know, you get chartered flights places, you have training camps in, you know, really cool parts of the world. You have all the food you need, all the resources you need. And so like it was pretty cool. I was probably too excited about that. Lost focus a little bit because, you know, you show up in the village and you walk into your room and, you know, rewind 3 weeks, you're at training camp. Our training camp was in Knoxville. So we had a training camp in Knoxville and then a training camp in France to get on the time zone. And then we flew to London. But in Knoxville, we stayed in a hotel and they took us into like a conference or convention room. And there's all these people in there just measuring you for bespoke clothing, you know, your opening and closing ceremony outfits. Yeah. And so it's like, you know, we had all these custom suits from Ralph Lauren and, you know, so then you show up in the village and it's all just in your room. And I was just, you know, like a kid in a candy store.
Oh, for sure. And it's all got the American flag on it.
And, you know, I've saved a good amount of it. A lot of it I honestly gave away because I was just so proud of it.
Oh, yeah. And now you're like, hey, could I get that?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, man, I'm missing all these pieces of clothes that I love so much. But no, it's pretty special. Like I still don't, you know, it's hard to let it set in. I kind of have a mindset where I feel like I never really truly deserve something. So like try to make the most of it. And I feel very lucky and I was lucky to make it by 8/100ths of a second. But I also know that for 6 years, I kept placing third and fourth in all my races at these major international selection meets. So like I knew I deserved to be there, but it still was, it was just hard to materialize that in my mind.
That's interesting. And I think even back to, because when I first reached out to Chad, I was interested in, obviously the business ventures you're a part of and the risk involved in that. But when I think back to, I didn't even know you're an Olympian. I'm so sorry when I first texted you.
You're fine.
But when it comes to it, I mean, the risk involved of, you kind of knowingly or not risked almost probably your whole entire youth to stay in a pool.
Yeah.
I mean, I swim team at Four Springs for a couple years when I was a little kid, and breaststroke was my favorite.
There we go.
Couldn't get the butterfly down.
Yeah.
But you get there in the morning and it's summer and the pool's like 12 degrees. It feels like you were doing cold plunges before it was cool.
Brutal.
Yeah. But what's the risk involved for? I mean, your whole youth was swimming. What do you feel like the biggest risk you took to become an Olympian was leading up to that?
It's a good question because at the time it didn't feel like risk. I mean, as I find out more about myself as I get older, as you get older, you think more. Or at least I like to think that you do, and you think more about what you're doing, and you try to be thoughtful. And so it feels riskier now than it did then. But I guess what I think about is like trying to find things that I just really, really love, where it doesn't feel like I'm working, where it's just all I can think about. And usually for me, when I'm in that zone, I'm pretty hard to beat. And so I just always felt that really good laser focus. Like it didn't feel risky if I didn't go to a dance because I wanted to go to Saturday morning practice. It felt like, I'm really good. I'm going to achieve this. The risk was going to the dance. And that's just a general example, but it was, it's funny now, like I still try to swim some, and because there's nothing at stake and I'm kind of doing it just because I enjoy it and I don't like to run or do any other cardio. Yeah. It's harder for me to get up and go to a practice in the morning. Whereas back then, if I missed a practice, it was like I'd guilt trip myself for 2 weeks. And, I rarely ever took time off.
It's rare to see. I think a lot of people I see who are successful at a young age in something, it's a whole, now I'm sure your parents pushed you. Seems like it was a little bit internal motivation. Yeah. Versus a lot of times it's, my dad really wanted me to be really good at this. Therefore, I didn't really have an option if I was going to wake up for that Saturday morning practice. Yeah. If you're in high school and you're the one motivating yourself, I feel like that's the biggest thing. I saw, at least going to college, a lot of athletes would get to college and it was like that push from parents wasn't there, and then they could slack where they had freedom to. And I feel like obviously you went to the Olympics, so athletes who are at the highest end of their field obviously have to have some internal motivation. And I think that transitions well over to the business world. Yeah, you didn't just, when you finished swimming, you went to Stanford, correct? Yes, for an MBA. And tell me about what gave you the drive. Obviously, you said before you enjoy finding work in things that are fun to do, and that you obviously own a golf course and own a golf facility, I would say. And so it seems like it would be a lot of fun. But tell me about the jump into that, and then, what it looks like, because you guys have added a new one in New Albany, correct? Yes. So now there's multiple locations, and tell me about Different Strokes and what you guys are doing with it.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, one interesting thing too, just to go back a sec when you talk about parents, I mean, my parents kind of had to walk me off the ledge more than push me to it. And, tell me to chill out. And so, like, I don't recommend that for everyone, but for me, it's what worked. And I've kind of looked at life as like a series of tests, and I try to be brutally honest with myself. It's, I've failed a ton in all parts of my life. And it's always my fault. It really is, because it's a misstep here or there. And sometimes there's bad luck, but, a lot of it's just preparation, in the way that I see things. So like finishing, 6th at the Olympics was heartbreaking. I didn't even want to watch the race for a long time, because I sort of, in my mind, I got to making that final. And when I got to that final, I was like, this is good enough. This is all I've ever wanted, and didn't consider myself capable of winning a medal. And now as I think back, it's like my focus just stopped. It was like I kind of achieved this goal. Like I've always thought about being in the Olympic final, but for some reason I never thought about standing on the podium. And so I wouldn't say I chickened out, but like I didn't didn't have my edge in that final. And, I attribute that to myself and the way I thought about it. I was too enamored with everyone around me, being in the ready room with all these people that I've idolized for so many years, and just being happy with being there. And then already in my mind, moving on to the next test, which was like, how am I going to make money? How am I going to make a living? How am I going to get to a level similar to this in the rest of my life? I don't want to be, like the cliche burnout athlete. I don't want to live on this, Olympic recognition for too long, because I just feel like that's dangerous. And so going to Stanford was a test. It was really hard for me. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't focus in undergrad in the classroom that hard. And my grades were fine. I have been fortunate that I can navigate school pretty well. But I just wanted to see, like, how do I get to a place where, if I can go to a Stanford for business school, I mean, there's going to be all these people. It's going to be like I'm back at the Olympics, all these people from all over the world with so many different talents. They're going to push me to figure out who I am and how I can be better. And that was, in all honesty, the rudest awakening, the hardest part of my life, because swimming was pretty natural, and I developed so many skills before I could even, think about how good I was. I started swimming at 5. And then all of a sudden I go to Stanford when I'm 25, and it's like every failure, you actually know you're failing. But yeah, that was a interesting process. I mean, I basically just got back from London, and we had a manager on our team at Arizona who had taken the GMAT, which is the test that you have to take to get into business school. And he was like a pretty affluent kid, so I knew he'd probably paid for like the best study books and classes, and so I just bought his books secondhand. I was living in a house with a bunch of guys that were just partying. They had just finished school, and so I would just lock myself in my room and study. And I took the GMAT twice. I wouldn't say I knocked it out of the park by any means.
I don't know what it says about me that I don't know what a GMAT is.
It's like it's a standardized test. It's like the SAT.
Okay.
But just to get into business school, basically, it has a verbal section and a math section, and I didn't do great on the math. I did really well on the verbal, but I sort of just crafted my story and tried to tell it in my applications, and I was turned down from 4 of the 6 schools that I applied to, and given an interview at 2 of those 6, and I interviewed at both, and then got into Stanford, and that was really exciting. And then the hard part was I had to actually go to school. Yeah. And get through it.
The race wasn't over. You had to actually go to class now.
And it was really hard. I mean, the first quarter I was failing. I was like on academic probation. I was like, this is so embarrassing. And I remember going home and just like sitting in my room and kind of crying, like depressed, like I'm going to fail out, like this is going to be the all-time embarrassment. Everybody's written about me getting into this school that's a, swimming publisher, and here I am barely making it. I turned it around.
They won't write that second article. Yeah. It's okay. They just wrote the first one. You'll be fine.
It was brutal. Like 2 weeks in, I got shingles because I was so stressed.
Oh, and no way.
I thought I had, I don't know what I like was raising my hand in class, and like my ribs hurt. And so I thought I like did something to my ribs working out, or I don't know. So I went to a chiropractor, and he's like, you have this rash down your back. I think you have shingles. And I was like, what's that?
He's like, your grandma gets it.
Yeah.
And
he's like, most people over the age of 70 get it. And then I go to find out that it's like fairly common at Stanford with like undergrad and graduate students, because there's a lot of people that feel out of place and really stressed. And so, got through that. But went there not knowing who I wanted to be, had incredible exposure from my classmates and teachers. And then sort of had a few missteps on the way out, career-wise, like just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But all of that, I think, sort of led me to this path of becoming an entrepreneur, which is sort of normal for my family, a lot of entrepreneurs in my family. And I just hadn't had the, I won't say exposure, because I was always exposed to entrepreneurs, but I hadn't really thought about it. I was just so focused on swimming, which like now that I say that seems so silly. But at the time it was my world. So
of course, you were 6th best in the world at a single event. So there's not many people who could say that. That's mind blowing. How many people are in the world? 5 billion?
A lot. But it's not as crazy when you narrow down how many people are swimming. And,
yeah, I mean, you put everybody in the water, cool. You're going to beat every single person except for 5 people, which is nuts.
It was neat. I mean, I was proud of that 6th place finish, but like even now, I look at like the there's trials, international trials like every year, and I look at the times, and there's some kids that have beat me by a few seconds, and my name keeps falling further and further down the list of all-time performers, and that embarrasses me.
What's the name of the thing that's I forget what it's called, but it's pretty much the fact that it's some, I wish I knew what it was called, but when somebody breaks something in a race, it just opens up to the next year. It's always broken. The number that nobody thinks anybody can beat was, I think, what was it?
It
5
keeps
minute
happening.
mile or a 4 minute mile.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was, but it's interesting to see. It's like, it's almost like in business, when you see somebody attain something that everybody thought was impossible, then it gives you the motivation. Oh, I can do that too. And then 2-3 people do it the next year. And then there's another goal that's there. And it's like, it's cool to see. And that's one of the reasons I started this podcast was, especially for young people, to see people who are steps ahead of them or doing what they want to do, hearing, okay, here's how I got there. And everybody has a different story. There's very few people who sit down and go, oh, I was an Olympic athlete and here's what I trained all growing up. But what do you feel like the main things you were that you could pull away from swimming that brought you over into the business world that helped out from your years of swimming?
It's a good question because I think about it all the time. And it was always like when I was interviewing for jobs. So like the first job I took at school, I was in investment banking. So I hadn't really had a formal job before school. And so everybody's like, okay, my advisors, like investment banking or consulting. And I was like, what are those? Like I don't even know what that means. And they were like, you need to highlight on your resume and in your application and your interviews, what specific skills you've taken from swimming. And like I find it a bit cliche to say, oh, well, I'll work harder. I've got a bigger motor. And at least then I found it cliche. And I think now those are really what differentiate me. But I think the main thing is just I don't mind having my back up against the wall. I kind of enjoy it. And it makes things like I can feel things better when I'm stressed. And I feel like I perform better. And I feel like I just have a tremendous amount of training that relates to that. Like this year has been a really hard year. I mean, our River Road facility was under 15 feet of water for 3 weeks. We've had construction on River Road that, severely limited our traffic. We're trying to open our second location. The weather impacted that. I don't know much about opening a business in Southern Indiana, and it's, I've had a few lessons along the way. And then we had our first daughter, 5 days after opening our second location. And, it was like a total whirlwind, but like I just kind of know when that happens, I sort of want the ball, so to speak. And so I think like that skill, and then also just, being very curious, like I think how invested I was in learning about the sport of swimming, and about the way that people swim races or the, simple things like the gear they wore, how many strokes they took per race. That level of curiosity is what keeps me moving forward. And like I'm always, always working. It's not always when I'm in the office or when I'm on site, but like when I'm taking a shower and I'm thinking about a new automated ball dispenser and how much it's going to cost to add that to our facility, or if we want to invest in robotic technology with, the new mowers, autonomous mowers that are out there, autonomous ball pickers, and what that's going to offset.
Don't take away those
labor
ball picker boy jobs. Those were important for me. Okay, I'm just.
I know. Well, but that's the type of stuff I think about. But it's like that level of curiosity.
I made $7.25 an hour.
Hey, it's gone up.
I know doubled. It's gone up. I made $7.25 an hour, and worked a lot in there.
Yeah.
I go back to what you were hitting on with athletes, and I work in real estate, and seeing the amount of people who are the comparison to. I was not a high-level athlete, but I played baseball and loved it. And seeing the amount of athletes, and especially high-level athletes that excel in the real estate field. Yeah. Because what I compare it to is, you see a guy go out there and shoot 19 of 20 3-pointers. Okay, you can't just accidentally do that. That guy's been in the gym a ton. And even if he was born with a great shot, you might be able to make 12 of 20 3-pointers. But there's something that happened to go from 12 to 19. That was a lot of time in the gym. There was a lot of work. And I think that in at least in my field, I'm sure it's the same in all entrepreneurial fields, but there's this gap of, you can tell when everybody has their way of finding clients or operating their business or whatever they're going to do, but taking it from one level to the next is the thing that I feel like a lot of athletes have that mindset of, okay, I have this God-given ability. I have a body built for this sport. Obviously, I'm guessing your hands and feet are bigger than what.
Hands aren't honestly not huge.
Really? I always thought you had to have like big hands and big feet.
My sister's hands are as big as mine.
Don't
tell everybody. My wife's hands are as big as mine.
Really? Because your wife was a swimmer as well, right?
She was. I'm strong. I can jump. I had a really good feel, which I attribute to just being in the water all the time when I was a kid.
Is your wingspan real long?
Wingspan's long. I'm definitely gifted, but like I was the second shortest guy on the Olympic team. But
really?
I could probably box jump the second highest. So it's all relative.
Yeah.
And believe, but it takes a while to believe in that skill set. But it's funny. Our daughter's got big hands and feet. She's so young. Who knows if it's real? But
she's the 100th
like, I really hope you
You're
got
like, yes.
Mal's hands and feet, not mine, because like I wear an 11 and a half. I'm not like
yeah.
huge feet or anything. I mean, I had a roommate. He was 6'7". He had size 18 feet.
No way.
That helps. He won a gold medal. May have been the difference.
Wow. Yeah, that's nuts. That is okay. So let's get into different strokes.
Yeah.
When did you buy it?
September of 2021. We at the time, I'd moved home to help my dad operate Blurwood and Louisville Tennis Club and just sort of figure out what our next steps were going to be. And he had done a fantastic job growing both of those, and they just got to a point where they were big, and he wanted some help, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be at home, just because I'd spent some time elsewhere, and I just hadn't really thought that far ahead, but moved back and was helping him, and I had a friend who was a real estate broker reach out and said, I've got this driving range for sale, and I was like, no chance. It's a dying industry. It's awful. And I was like, well, where is it? Because I just hadn't put two and two together. And he's like, well, it's in Louisville. And I said, well, is it different strokes? He said, yeah. And I said, well, if you're calling me the real estate's for sale, and I think that's an amazing piece of land, even if it is in the floodplain. So we signed an NDA, looked at the financials, and they were pretty healthy, not tremendous, but healthy. And so they could support a good amount of debt. And so talked to my dad about it. And I was like, I'm not going to get the loan approved. I found this opportunity. Will you sign on this with me and help me, give me some collateral so I can get this done? And he did, and he loves a good adventure too. And he's a tremendous resource when it comes to renovating and updating and basically improving facilities. And so, we've worked really well as a team in that regard, where it's anytime we undertake a project, he's super helpful on helping me physically get it built. And then, I handle the day-to-day operations and strategy moving forward. So, the first year or so, we didn't do much because we still had the clubs. And then we actually sold both the clubs in February of 2023, which, freed us up a little bit. And then I just started digging in more. I went to the PGA show. I just traveled around, looked at facilities, and, thought like, hey, we can turn this place from a seasonal facility where it just dies in the winter, and maybe we can make it year round, or at least try to, and then we can add, some technology to it, and we can definitely improve the operation. And, like when we purchased it, it was running on a cash register. And so like if I wanted to know the, daily results, if I wasn't around or if I was in the office, I had to call an employee and ask him to run a Z report, send me a picture of it. So we changed that about a month in, and just updated it, right?
Yeah.
And it just started taking off. I mean, we doubled revenue in 2 years, and one thing I'm really proud of is we've reinvested every dollar and more.
That's awesome.
And, in lieu of paying ourselves anything, because it's not the goal. The goal is to build something lasting. Like my goal, and I know my dad's goal too, because we talk about it a lot, is to invest in these communities and build lasting assets that are approachable from a pricing perspective. They're not priced through the roof, that give people an opportunity to learn the game of golf, or if they're good at the game of golf, to practice, or if they want to have a social hangout, go down there and have a few cheap beers and play on the top tracer screen. So through sort of seeing that develop in Louisville, I just started researching the market and found that there's like 1,000+ standalone driving ranges in the United States. And I was like, I'm going to buy them. I don't know how I'm going to buy them, but I'm going to buy them knowing that I'm going to fix them up. I don't want them to be developed. And I want to make sure that there's a good, affordable intro to golf, non-5-hour facility in a lot of markets that are similar to Louisville across the Midwest. And so, that then took us into New Albany. And now, I've got a spreadsheet of 100 facilities within a 500-mile radius that I'm trying to figure out if it's possible to buy them and how I'm going to run them, and if I need to raise any capital, or it's just opens up to a whole new set of questions. But it's from the business side, it's there's a good margin, there's good economies of scale. The margin on a bucket of balls is almost 100%, and so like that allows for me to offer cheap beers and pay the pickers more than $7.25 an hour.
That was in 2010, 2011.
And but like that's a big deal to me. Like at the beginning of the summer, we have a kickoff meeting with the kids, and it's like, I want you to come in. I want you to give me your resume. I want to fix it. I want to write a letter of recommendation for you. I want you to find a job. I want you to invest in the culture here. I don't want you just making a summer paycheck. That's my biggest fear, is that we just employ people that don't care about what we're trying to achieve. So I want to share with you what it is that we're trying to achieve, and I want you all to take something away from this, and I want you to lean on me as a resource. That's awesome. Because I think one of the things we had talked about a little bit is like advice you'd give to 18-year-old Clark is part of that is like every experience is meaningful. It's like being a summer lifeguard. Like some people just do it to get a paycheck, but some people do it to learn how to take responsibility and keep a place clean, or interact with customers, or really watch the pool and save lives, right? And that can take them. I mean, one of the most successful people I ever met, he runs a hedge fund, and I was like, what was your best job, your most impactful job? He was like, I was an ocean lifeguard in New Jersey, and I had to grow up really quickly if I was going to handle that job well and get promoted. He's like, it taught me how to embrace responsibility. And so like that's what, it's tough to get all those things floated together to get staff to take it seriously working at a driving range, right? It's just got this aura around it that it's, tin cup, right? It's just kind of a joke, right? And there's just people going down there to hit golf balls, and like I want to improve that experience, and I think it's a cool segment, and I just think there's communities all around the United States that have these driving range assets that could use a lot of love, and at the same time, I can buy some real estate.
Yeah, of course. Well, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, obviously, the River Road one's in a floodplain, so that makes it a whole lot harder to develop. But so even the one I worked at before has been completely developed as apartment complexes now, or condos, and I'm sure there's so many across America that are, it's probably the easiest phone call for developers to make, because it's like, well, if it's not in a floodplain, it's in a good location where people have the funds to play golf. It's probably in an area that's gone up in value a ton, and those are probably easy phone calls to make. That's super interesting. And I think, I look back at the time I worked there, it was what honestly made me enjoy golf. I'd go in every night when I would go pick up all the trash cans, because it was open until late. They had like lights, so it was, we'd close at 10. I'd go around and pick up trash cans with my 9-iron and 7-iron, and I'd play 9 holes every single night while I picked up trash cans, and that's what made me start enjoying golf in high school. So it was
and that's what we want the kids to do. I'm like, look, you can hit as many balls as you want as long as you're not on the clock.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And like as soon as
I might have been on the clock when I was hitting a couple of balls, but I
I
wasn't working for you, so sorry about that.
It's fine. And I mean, that's another cool part of the story too, is the family that owned Different Strokes before we bought it was David Jones Sr. of Humana. And so we, purchased the property from his family after he'd passed away. And to me, that was pretty special, because he's obviously been so successful. So, I immediately read his book after that. And it made me want to do a better job, to ensure the future of a location or, a business that he had helped build, even if it was just, peanuts for him. There's still something special about making sure a place can continue on and continue to be relevant in a community, after 30 years.
That's so cool. And is Reimagine Golf your brand?
Yeah, so Reimagine Golf's sort of like the parent brand. It's like, when I go to conventions and stuff, that's our brand that owns the Different Strokes locations. And it's just, we just wanted to think of something that was maybe a bit more, I won't say professional, but just identified more with what we were trying to do, which is really reimagine the driving range, make it better, improve it, not just, throw a bunch of 2x4s out and let people hit off of, patchy ryegrass. How do we get Bermuda in there? How can we actually fix this? And it's tough, but Reimagine Golf actually it employs every single employee that works for us. And at this point we've got 5 full-time employees and, 30 plus part-time employees.
That's awesome.
And then, Reimagine is owns the property and the operating companies that are at each location.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. There's so much in our conversation that I didn't expect to get down, but it's cool how your risk of going and buying something and taking your background of, I think the challenge for people that at least I see from our conversation is take the background of whatever you grew up in and take the ways, if it was swimming for a swim team and you came in 12th place in your neighborhood, or if you came in 6th place in the world, find the ways that you learn to, like you said, when my back was against the wall, I was a fighter and I was ready to roll and I was ready to work hard, and find the things that you have in you that have been instilled. It might not be you're the 6th best in the world at something, but what are you the best at in your family? What are the things that you have learned to say, okay, this is going to prepare me for my business sake? And then I think one of the biggest risks I heard was jumping into even applying to go to Stanford and jumping in and going to a college that's getting an MBA that's a place that's in high regards and obviously very hard, and opening yourself up to, okay, I could just be the swimmer who went on my Olympic tour and now I go and I go to swim clinics around Kentucky and I sign autographs and I take pictures and I get a couple $100 from going to do this. But saying, okay, I'm going to take what I built here, rolling into something else and invest in myself again, which I feel like that's a massive risk. And then diving into, okay, I'm taking what I learned in business school and reinvesting it into something that you love in the community. Obviously, you're a golfer yourself. And then saying, okay, that's awesome. We did it here in Louisville. We've 2x'd revenue. Now how can I do it in, what'd you say, 500 other locations?
I mean, they're everywhere. My the biggest risk right now is how do I operate something if I'm not present? And it's just having the right staff to trust and trusting that I'll continue to watch the results and that we can, manage geographic dispersion. I don't know how to do it. I've never done it. And so I'm very scared of that. But you just look to all the people in the past and present that are doing that currently, and it's possible. And so, just doing a ton of research on how do I make that possible? How do I create the right org chart? How do I create the right incentives and goals and processes? And like that takes a lot of time and it's boring. It's not as exciting as being on site and operating, right? So, I spent a lot of time on trying to set up basically the rails for how this thing's going to run. And, it's thankless because it's just me in an office, just crunching numbers and then trying to sit down with staff, not trying, but sitting down with staff, our full-time staff, and going through like why these numbers matter. If we switch our pricing model like we did on the top tracer bays, what are the results we're seeing? And, am I happy with them? Yes or no? Are we happy with them? Do we think our, occupancy's high enough? Are people using it and finding value? But then also being brave enough to say, okay, we're going to test a pricing model. If it doesn't work, we're going to pivot. And so like to your point about, it doesn't really matter where you place. Like I don't really like to tell, people that I was an Olympian. I mean, I'm proud of it. I'll say yes if I'm asked about it. I got this tattoo when I was 24, like huge, just because I was cocky and excited.
It's cool though.
It's neat, but it's like as I get older, like my goal is to empower everybody to find kind of their Olympics. Like how can I bring out the best in you? How can you trust me? And how do I trust you? And then how can we work together to help you succeed? I take that very seriously. And so like sometimes, if I'm not getting a ton out of somebody, or I feel like they're negative, or they don't have a great attitude, like it really impacts me, because I'm like, how do this is my fault, this is my problem, like how do I inspire them? I think that's so important, because it's not like we're hiring people to work at a hedge fund where it's like, oh, you're gonna make $2 million a year. This is a slow building process, and if we succeed, if we grow, there's more on the table for you. And it's convincing that person that that's available and that you're going to, in fact, provide that if we can achieve the results together, knowing that I'm tethered to it as well, right? Like if we don't get the results, I don't eat, you don't eat, and trying to get everybody behind the same thing. So it's, that's a challenge. And I think it's a good point. It's like, once you get to a certain age, no one really cares how good you were at football in high school, or, like, if you went to the Olympics, it's like, that's neat. All that says is that I'm an exceptional athlete. But that doesn't really matter when I go play in a member guest tournament at some country club. You know, it's like some people like to talk about it, but it's like that doesn't mean I'm going to be a good golfer. You know, like achieving.
Is your golf swing good? What's your handicap?
I'm a 6 right now, but I had a few good rounds that kind of took me lower. I'm erratic.
You literally just described my golf game. You know, I'm a 6.3, and I had like 3 good rounds at the end of last year. And I went on and shot a 91 the other day, and I'm like, that should not be at a 6.3. I need to be around 9 or 10.
But that's why it's a beautiful game. It's tough. It's like in swimming, you just try harder, and you know you work harder. And golf, it's like sometimes that can just send you into a spiral, move you backward.
I think the handicap thing's the best thing that ever happened in the world, because it's like you can as long as somebody has a legit handicap, you can go out with any person in the world and go play a competitive game. Yeah, and it is. It's very cool. It's obviously. I mean, obviously you enjoy golf. You're making a living around it. But well, I thank you so much for your time. Yeah. Any challenge you want to give? It's a lot of young people who listen. What's your biggest challenge you would say to somebody who's saying, "Man, I have a risk that I want to take. I'm having a hard time just jumping into it." What would your push be for that? You know, understand the risk. So, like, by that I mean the financial side of the risk. You know, you don't want to gamble, right? Like, you still want to make sure that you're safe, you're insulated in the risk that you take. So for me, that's buying good properties that I know that if we fail, we'll have some you know, potential development value, even if they aren't a floodplain. I mean, the right developer can still make it happen. And then, you know, your relationship risk, your social risk, you know, identify all that as well. I mean, like, if you like to, if you're married and you have a kid, I mean, it's harder to start something that you know you're going to have to grind 7 days a week on. I mean, consider all those elements. But really the main thing for me is, like, you sort of calculate the financial risk. You understand what your backing is. You understand what your tolerance is for maybe no paycheck for a while, like what I've been through. And you also understand the market and if there's growth potential, and if you can, you know, how hard is it to actually grow? Because, like, the facilities we have, I mean, there's a ceiling probably at each particular facility because it's bricks and mortar. And as much as we try to push stuff online, gift card sales or bucket card sales, or, you know, we're launching a membership actually tomorrow at our New Albany location, there will probably be a revenue ceiling in each location. And so risk is more, can I continue to buy them? Are people actually willing to sell them? Can I get the pricing that I need? And understanding all those details that you can underwrite to. So, like, I know that I've got to pay less than or about $100,000 per acre in a pretty good market to underwrite that and turn a profit on the driving range. So I can't go out and buy something that's $250,000 an acre, even if it's the best place I've ever seen, right? Because then I'm going to have to spend 5 times what I typically spend to build something big enough to have enough spaces to create enough revenue to offset all that debt that I'm going to have to take on, because I'm not, you know, abnormally rich and just spending and investing all my own money on these properties. So, you know, but that's kind of more on the nitty gritty side. I think when you're younger, you know, it's test it out and follow through with it. You know, don't just have an idea and just keep talking about the idea. Put pen to paper, plan it out, launch it, you know, incorporate, you know, go through the legal hoops, like, just make it real for yourself. So you know that, okay, I have to do something now. And then you can kind of figure out if entrepreneurship's for you. Because it's not for everybody, right? So I think that's important. And then I think just for kids, like, when you're looking for a job, make sure that you find a boss. You know, I hate the word boss, a manager, whomever it is you're working for that's interested in you and wants to be a mentor as well. You know, lifts the hood and lets you look underneath and talks to you about your personal life, not in a way where you're getting too close, but just in, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? How can I help you achieve those? You know, what is it that you want to learn? Because 2 years of being around somebody like that is going to empower you a ton. And so if you really invest in the job that it is that you're choosing, even if you're in high school and you want to be a picker, you know, at one of our driving ranges, make sure you're just around somebody that helps you understand the meaning of your job and why it's important and what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. So you can kind of see how the machine works. And I think that's helpful and can really increase your curiosity and help you understand what it is you want to do. And I think it's equally important is understanding what you don't want to do. You know, failing a few times, being like, that, I'm not any good at that. I don't want to do that. You know, like, that's fine too, you know, but do that early.
because it just gets harder as you get older, right? There's
Oh
more
yeah.
at stake.
Well, like you have
More
kids
bills
now.
to
You're not
pay.
you're not trying to figure out what you want to do for work the rest of
No.
your life right now when
Not
you
at
got
all.
a 5-week-old at home.
No.
Well,
So,
dude, thanks for your time.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks
Thank
for
you. I
thanks for
appreciate
making it. It's fun. And if you're in the Louisville market and you're listening to this, head down. River Road is a little bit closed right now, but you can still get to different
you can,
strokes.
so we're clear now. Like they're, if you're coming from Zorn or Indian Hills Trail, you're good. So you take 71 to Zorn, you're good. It's just if you're trying to come from like Lime Kiln, because that construction's heading out Lime Kiln, but we still have people that call every day to ask if we're open.
Like, yes, we're open. All the
yes,
signs,
we are
they're
open.
open. So different
8
strokes. Or
a.m.
you're
to
over in
10
New
p.m.
Albany,
Yep.
head over, get a membership.
Mhm.
And if you're looking for a place to go hit some balls and hang out with friends, go do it there. So, dude, thank you so
Awesome.
much
Thank
for
you. I
making it
appreciate
and
it. Yeah,
enjoyed it.
of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.